We're live now. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the regular meeting of Council and General Committee for Monday, April 12th, 2021. We're going to start with O Canada. Turn it over to Evan for O Canada.
Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, good afternoon. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada trees and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous people. So I got a bit of a mayor's report that I just want to go through, and I'm going to start with condolences to former city councillor, Mr. Robert Bob Shannon. Condolences to the family, and he was the St. Patrick's Ward city councillor from 1986 to 1991, and flags are lowered at half-mast here in our community in his honor. As well, condolences to Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II and the royal family on the passing of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Our thoughts are with the entire royal family as they mourn this significant loss. And again, you'll notice that the flags will be at half-mast as directed by the federal government as well. Since April 8th, the province has been under a province-wide stay-at-home order requiring everyone to remain at home except for essential purposes for at least the next 4 weeks. This means stay at home and only go out for essential items. In-person shopping is only for essential items such as grocery and trips to the pharmacy and healthcare services. Outdoor amenities in St. Catharines remain open, so it's important to continue to get outdoors for your physical and mental health. We also heard today that the province made the difficult decision to move elementary and secondary schools to remote learning following the April break. A decision about when it is safe to again resume in-person learning will be made as the situation requires. I know that people are tired. I know this has been a long year, but we need to contain the spread, especially the variants that are moving through our community much more quickly than the first and second waves. Protect your family and others in our community by staying home. You'll notice that our hospitals have postponed surgeries here in Niagara. The number of patients under the age of 60 at the hospital with COVID quickly is climbing, and the number of people in ICU needing critical care is at an all-time high. We also need to help our businesses and follow the directives to contain the spread so that there are no future rolling lockdowns. The need to mitigate risk is why I was so disappointed with the blatant disregard for the provincial orders during Saturday's protest here in St. Catharines. I want to be clear, this is not about infringing on anyone's rights. While I believe in free speech, the actions of those protesting put our community at greater risk and further causes harm to our abilities to control COVID-19. I truly believe the event does not represent the spirit and character of the majority of people in our community who have been working hard to push back against COVID-19 for the past 13 months. And to those asking, the Niagara Regional Police did not turn a blind eye. They did their best to control the situation on Saturday, and they will continue to investigate further with regional bylaw enforcement. When it comes to the vaccine, over 110,000 doses have been given to residents in our community. We are now at 21% vaccinated for the first dose. As soon as Niagara Health and Public Health get their doses, they are getting them into the arms of residents. And I just want to say thank you to Niagara Health, Niagara Public Health, the volunteers and the community partners, the pharmacies, those who are volunteering to put the jab into the arms, for all the work that they've done as we are leading the province in terms of our vaccination rate. We got to continue to create that momentum moving forward. Following the Niagara Regional Public Health and social media, that's where you should go for your latest information. Currently open for 60+ residents and 55+ through pharmacies. And a reminder to those who are vaccinated, you still need to follow public health directives, wear a mask, keep your distance, wash your hands, and stay home if you're sick. Last week, the regional chair and all Niagara mayors sent a letter to the Premier Ford to support small businesses in our community. This third wave in the province's stay-at-home order is having a massive impact on residents and businesses. Our small businesses community has suffered the brunt and losing billions of dollars per month. 90% of Niagara's total businesses have fewer than 10 employees, and they are the backbone of our community. Now is the time for us to take action for them. Supporting local has never been more critical. Using small businesses for curbside pickups and local deliveries could help keep these businesses alive. As a municipality, we have used our tools to show support, deferring property taxes, something that council did, eliminate fees for patio and business licenses, something council did, allowing patio extensions and street closures, something that council did, and implementing buy local campaigns that our economic development team has put in place. We were one of the first in the province to have the pickup STC up and online. But we are asking for continued financial support and extended benefits for our business community from the provincial and federal government. Previous funded benefits and programs need to be distributed as quickly as possible. Introduction of new supports for reopening applications for all affected businesses with streamlined processes, and federal and provincial coordination on providing sick leave benefits. And then for those of you who want to support local business in our community, check out Love STC. And that's where you'll have all the information about supporting local businesses here in St. Catharines. Speaking of downtown, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the retirement of someone special in our community who has been supporting the downtown for 21 years. Tisha Polacco is retiring as the executive director. During her tenure, she has worked hard to promote and support St. Catharines downtown, helping feed into the revitalization of our core. The city has seen many positive changes because of her efforts, and on behalf of her members, and I also want to say on behalf of council and city staff, I want to thank her for all that she has done to promote our community and wish her best when she retires in July. Today is the start of Ramadan in our Muslim community, and to our Muslim community, we wish you a blessed and peaceful Ramadan as you observe your fast. As we physically distance and stay home, I encourage the community to find new ways to come together through technology, and that you find peace in your reading of the Quran. Like last year, the city has reached out to the mosque and the leaders in our community of the Muslim community and allowed them to do their call for prayer in a public broadcasting. So if you do hear that in our community, this is something that we've said that is appropriate. Communities are doing it across Canada that have mosques, and they're doing a call to prayer in a very public way. So to all those observing this holy month, I wish you a successful and rewarding fast and a sincere Ramadan Mubarak. Finally, we're wearing all these t-shirts today. There's a number of us wearing these t-shirts as April is Parkinson's Awareness Month. And the National Day of Recognition for Parkinson's was April 11th. Tonight, we are wearing Lutzy Strong t-shirts in support of Steve Lutzik and to raise awareness. The t-shirts were purchased through the Steve Lutzik Foundation, with proceeds being directed to the Parkinson's Clinic at the Hotel du Shaver and Rehabilitation Center. We're wishing Steve all the best as he continues to battle this disease, and all those who are suffering with Parkinson's by wearing shirts like this and supporting all the initiatives that the Parkinson's Foundation is working on. We're standing with you as you struggle through this very challenging disease. So with that, I just got a couple more things I want to touch on. This is Poetry Month, and so the Mayor's Poetry Challenge is continuing. And this April with a theme to celebrate everyday heroes that have made a difference over the last year, from frontline healthcare and long-term care workers to the grocery store clerks, to the volunteers helping support our most vulnerable, to teachers and parents pivoting to online learning, we've seen many people step up in different ways as being heroes. So we're asking those who want to put pen to paper and create a bit of a prose to submit to poetry@stcatharines.ca. And the deadline is April 30th, and we'll be sending out more information on that. Clean City is coming up. Earth Day is coming up. And so while we can't be together to clean up a lot of the different places of our parks, we're asking families to go out with your loved ones. And if you're living alone and you want to head out into one of the parks and valleys and look to pick up, please do so. Help to keep our community clean. There's going to be more information on Engage STC as ways to get involved. And we're just looking for this spring to do a bit of a spring cleanup after a long winter. And I just want to thank Councillor Townsend for being the deputy mayor in March. And for April, we have Councillor Porter. So I apologize for the length of that mayor's report. And then in closing, I just want to acknowledge Roberto's Pizza Passion closed on Saturday after a long time in our community. And the family had carried on the tradition of Roberto and his love for Italian cuisine. And the family has now closed their doors. And so it was wonderful to see a lot of people go out. I know Councillor Townsend, Councillor Cisco, Councillor Sorrento, they were all there at different times during the day. And it was wonderful to see the community come out and share some stories about Roberto. So I'll leave it at that. We lost a wonderful flavor in our community, but a person that we will never forget. So turn it over to the clerk for the agenda.
Through you this evening, Mr. Mayor, the following items have been added to your sugar sink folders this evening, Council. Correspondence from Paul Pattison regarding the Transportation Master Plan. Correspondence from Bev Wright regarding the Transportation Master Plan. Correspondence from Linda Purpura, same thing, Transportation Master Plan. And correspondence from Virginia Stewart, again, Transportation Master Plan correspondence. The following amendments have been made to this evening's agenda. Please note that for General Committee, item 2.1, City of St. Catharines Beaches Strategy, a date error occurred in the summary of the report, which will be corrected before the next council meeting. Council Agenda 11.1 will be discussed prior to General Committee Agenda Item 3.1. Item 2.6, Council Correspondence, additional correspondence, sub-item 1, confidential memorandum from the Deputy Clerk will be deferred until the next meeting of Council on April 26th. And that's all the changes for this evening.
All right. So in terms of the agenda, so we moved some stuff around, correct, to the clerk?
Correct. We are moving, I'm sorry, the motion to adopt the, a motion from Councillor Porter will be moved up right after the consent motion.
Okay. And that's just if I step off, then Councillor Porter will be able to continue on with the meeting. Yes. So we're just going to move her motion up into that space. Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cisco, seconded by Councillor Townsend. All in favor? That's carried. And any conflicts of interest? Okay, seeing none. Adoption of the minutes. And so we have the council adopt the minutes of the meeting of council held on Monday, March 29th, 2021. The council adopt the minutes of general committee meeting held on Monday, March 29th, 2021. And then there's a third one. The council adopt the minutes of special meeting of council held on Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. Can I have a mover? Councillor Garcia and Councillor Phillips, all in favor? That's carried. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
May I interrupt, please? I should declare conflict of interest on consent 2.4, which concerns the Lincoln County Humane Society, of which I am a director.
Right. Sorry about that, Councillor. I should have caught that as well. My apologies. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Kushner. Okay. Anything being lifted from consent? Okay, seeing none. So I'll ask the clerk to move the consent agenda. So we have a mover, Councillor Kushner and Councillor Sorrento. And over to you, Bonnie.
Today's consent agenda. Item 2.1, Office of CAO, City of St. Catharines Beaches Strategy and Amendments to Parking Bylaw, Financial Management Services Director, Budget Standing Committee Cover Report meeting of March 22nd, 2021. Item 2.3, Planning and Building Services, 405 Merritt Street, request to shift previous community improvement plan approval for a tax increment finance TIF program incentive to a brownfield tax increment finance BTIF program incentive. 2.4, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk 2020 Annual Report, Animal Control and Licensing Services. Item 2.5, Legal and Clerks Services, Office of the City Clerk 2020 Annual Report, Integrity Commissioner. 2.6, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence, Save and Accept, additional correspondence, sub-item 1. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Council, for that. And we move on to where we're going to do the motion by Councillor Porter. So if I can ask Evan to pull it up on the screen, and then Councillor Porter, you'll introduce it, talk about it, and you'll get a seconder for it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe Councillor Cisco wanted to second this motion.
Okay.
I think we had a conversation about that. I'm bringing this motion forward because I've spoken with several businesses in the city, from very small businesses, performance venues, and also some hotels, who've told me that in the last several years, their commercial insurance rates have gone up, and to the point where they've tripled and in some cases quadrupled. And they've gone up again during the pandemic. There's also been cases where some people and some businesses have been denied coverage, which is really putting their operations at risk. So we know that provincial government has identified this as an issue. And what this motion is simply doing is just asking the provincial government to regulate insurance rates, right, and the commercial insurance rates specifically, and to make sure that this regulation continues after the pandemic, and to also make sure that price gouging isn't happening during the pandemic. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Any questions on this? I gotta look for the hands. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question through you to Councillor Porter. That third whereas, I guess, where we say in some cases double and triple over the past few years for no valid reason. Does that mean that the insurance companies will not even tell them why they're raising them?
Commercial insurance rates are regulated. So I spoke specifically with a family who owns several hotels in St. Catharines, and their rates have gone up. They've quadrupled over the last several years without any major claims. And if you look at the trends in Ontario, you'll see that Ontario pays some of the highest commercial insurance rates in the country. And it's just something that's happening in Ontario and needs to be regulated.
Thank you. I was just concerned about the wording when we say for no valid reason. I would imagine that the insurance companies must have given some reason.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the mover, can we include the Minister of Finance in there? Just because the Minister of Finance, I believe, does oversee the regulation of insurance rates, if I'm correct.
That's friendly. That was an oversight. Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
And can we also include AMO in there as well, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. And seeing no more further questions, I'll turn it over to the clerk for a vote.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
All right, thank you, Councillor Porter, for bringing that forward. And we'll make sure from an advocacy perspective that we get on that ASAP. So we now resolve into general committee, and we have a number of things on our discussion agenda. And the first thing up in the agenda will be the CAO's Office of the Administrator, the COVID-19 update. So I'll turn it over to CAO Chemnitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Our COVID update tonight has actually very few city-specific updates. It's generally an update on the items coming down from the province and from the area, our specific experience here in Niagara. We've been in lockdown before. We understand what it is and what's required. And so you see there the small few sentences in there that say we have created our response plans for each level. We're ready to implement them following any provincial announcements and any amendments to those. Given the extensiveness of the restrictions announced, all city facilities will be closed to the public throughout the duration of the stay-at-home order. Essential city services will remain available to residents through all of our alternative channels, including Citizens First online, telephone, and email. So the report itself is quite short, basically distills down to everyone needs to do what they must do to stop the spread, the situation. The recent trends are extremely concerning. We've hit a high number of cases, record numbers of cases, both provincial and locally. And we're back to numbers that we have seen in mid-January when concern was as high. Variants of concern are spreading very quickly through Niagara, now having over 800 total variant cases detected. That's more than a doubling from what we saw last Wednesday. So it's moving very quickly. As a community, we need to take the lockdown very seriously in order to spread the stop of the virus. Niagara Health, as the mayor already mentioned, has already taken extra measures, which include postponing some surgeries to protect our capacity for life-saving critical care. And we must all do our part to help them as they struggle to help or to work hard to help our residents remain healthy and return to health. On a more positive outlook, the vaccines continue to be administered throughout our municipality. We see over 20% of our residents now having had their first dose. Again, I encourage everyone to visit the Niagara Public Health information pages regarding both our COVID active cases and the vaccination statistics. You can see there, the pages have been updated recently, so you can see the amount of vaccines that have been administered by the NHS, by public health. And now we see the numbers starting to grow quite significantly as we roll out through pharmacies, and we hope in short order the primary medical care as well. And while there haven't been the ability to administer vaccines within doctors' offices, our local doctors and primary caregivers have been very helpful and much appreciated their help in helping the Niagara Public Health administer vaccines as well. You also see from that page that there are 10,000 of our citizens who have received their vaccination from other areas of the province. The numbers are climbing as we see the spread of that vaccine through our community, and we hope that, again, to spread the message to everyone that if you have the chance, if you are eligible and your vaccine appointment becomes available, please do take advantage of that, as it is one of our the biggest things that will help us come on the other side of this. So as we work through the various vaccination prioritization levels, the vaccination task force in Niagara is also working through the different communities and setting priorities, because the province has given us many broad and sometimes very specific prioritization levels, but there are also levels wherein we can determine what an appropriate Niagara prioritization might be. One of the ones that I'm sure that everyone is well aware of is that this week our education those in the education field, the teachers, school bus drivers, caregivers, etc., are receiving their vaccinations this week. In addition, there are also many municipal staff that are faced in the community and working those essential jobs that they can't do from home. And so there will be prioritization levels assigned for those. The Niagara area CAOs are working together to have a consolidated list across the region so that we ensure that there is equitable and very consistent application of the prioritizations of various municipal staff that are out there and providing those essential services in our community. I don't know that I had too many other, we don't have a specific financial implications update this week, but we continue to monitor and go through the forecasting and the calculating of where our financial health is at this point in time. And Mr. Mayor, that's my report for today.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to say thank you to Shelley, CAO Candidate Shelley, for her involvement on the community task force for vaccination. She has been very active on that task force and bringing a number of initiatives to the forefront in terms of the discussion with the other doctors and their CAOs and EMS and the hospital system that are part of that task force, led by Dr. Deck. And she's taking a very active role there. So I just want to thank her for her service at that level. Councillor Miller, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the update, Shelley. Just a question, and I did get personally an answer on this, but I just wanted this to be public because with the weather being nice and golf courses being open, I am starting to get questions about the municipal golf course. So can we just get some information on when it's opening for the public's benefit and if it will be any different this year as opposed to last year in terms of memberships and things like this?
Thank you. I will defer. I believe I did see John Kokalis on the meeting, and if he can give us some particulars about the golf course. Oh, John, you muted yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, I don't have any new information for you. I know we've been planning to open the golf club as usual. We're set to hire the staff at our usual time, but again, we're sort of looking at this right now in the context of the order if it goes longer. But right now, I'm not sure what the exact date is, but we are on schedule to open it. We are prepared to do it. We're making the plans, and we're hoping everything is going to be lifted in time. So, but again, I can definitely get the exact dates for you and get those circulated to you. But like I said, next week, we're starting to bring on the preliminary staff to prep it and get it ready, getting the fields ready. So hopefully we'll get we won't be much more than a month in lockdown. But again, everything's changing subject to COVID.
Thank you. What I'd heard today was we were opening on the 18th, and I wasn't sure if that was meaning staff were heading to the site on the 18th for the first time, or golfers would be. So I guess maybe if, again, because we are starting to get questions because other courses are open during the lockdown. So maybe just as a note to staff, whatever it is, it is what it is. Just as long as we can broadcast that when the course can be open so people are prepared, that would be helpful to me and my inbox. So thank you.
Sure, will do.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Sorrento, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for CAO Chemnitz or Director Pelletieri. Will we be hiring students this year? It's my only question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're not putting through any staff reductions as we did last year. So we have continued with our recruitment. If Director Pelletieri has some specifics she wishes to give, but we do not have the reductions in workforce that we did last year.
Okay, thank you.
Director Pelletieri.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing more to add than our CAO has indicated. Our process is the same as we would normally be going through at this time.
Very good. It's good news for the students and service levels. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Porter, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CAO, thank you for the time and your work on the community vaccination committee that they're involved with. I'm wondering, could you describe any communications or discussion at that table around providing information in in different languages about the vaccination, specifically for the migrant worker community, immigrant community? Has there been a discussion with the multicultural centers in the region to provide some information to improve the uptake of vaccinations amongst various communities who might not speak English?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. There has been some general discussion. I do know that for the migrant workers, the literature and all of the information is already available to them in languages other than English, so that it's seen as something that's very important, both to help members of our community that English is not their first language, and they may feel more comfortable reading something in a language where there is already some hesitancy out there, and so that to make it more comfortable, more accessible for them. I cannot speak directly to discussions that have been had with multicultural centers, but I will send an email up and ask for those details, and I can send that out to council. I can say that the vaccine task force, because it has such a widespread numbers of community members from service agencies, our Francophone community, our Indigenous community, I found it to be a very good collaborative table to have all of those voices be heard and to be able to hear and listen and also contribute. And so I will certainly, I know that it has been mentioned, but the more details of it, I can provide that to council. I will send an email up tomorrow.
Thank you. I do agree that it was a good idea to have this community table to discuss, and for transparency's sake. I think that was an initiative of our mayor. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for pushing that at the region. And I just have one more question around some of our municipal workers, and specifically transit drivers in St. Catharines and around the region. Now that school is not going back, there's still an urge to vaccinate education workers, obviously, but they're not going right back into the schools at this point. And transit drivers are supposed to be in this cohort. And has there been discussion and a timeline for vaccinating our transit workers who are, I consider them on the front lines as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. And I did want to add, which I neglected to say, I've just been reminded that there will also be, when we deal with some of our populations where English is not the first language, example, the migrant workers, they will also have interpreters available for actual questions. So I did want to add that, because I think there has been a good deal of attention paid to this presently. The transit workers are within this particular phase 2. They are a latter stage of phase 2. They're not in the first initial ones, but we're working our way through. I don't have a specific date. However, our transit commission has already been pulled for the information, provided that up to Niagara Public Health. And so a combination of the public health clinics and or the Seymour Hanna Clinic will see our transit workers vaccinated.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you very much. And again, thank you, CAO Chemnitz. There are no further questions from council. So just need a motion to receive the presentation. And I've got Councillor Cisco and Councillor Phillips. All in favor? It's a show of hands. It's a receiving of information. That's carried. And now we'll move on to 3.2. And this motion is being moved by Councillor Miller. And I'll ask Anthony, Director Martuccio, to provide introductory comments regarding the public washroom for the downtown core report. So once he's finished, I'll turn the floor over to Councillor Miller.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this report is in response to the council request to report back to council with regards to comparison between the automated public toilet and a conventional type washroom facility. Staff undertook an investigation where they actually took a look at 3 different types of washroom facilities: the automated public toilet, Portaloo type facility, as well as a conventional type all-season washroom. The report outlines the advantages, disadvantages of each in order to come up with those. Staff engaged with other municipalities, vendors, to gain feedback with regards to lessons learned in other communities where these types of facilities were installed. We also undertook a survey that was issued through Engage STC, where we asked the public their preferences of the type of facility as well as location. And we also engaged with Positive Living Niagara and Niagara Regional Police for their feedback on the various types of facilities. The report outlines the recommendation that staff has put forth with regards to the type of washroom that we would recommend installing. However, all the information is contained within the report.
All right, so Councillor Miller, I'll turn the table over to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to put the staff recommendation on the floor, but I don't have anything to add at this point, but I reserve the right to speak last if necessary.
Okay, like I need a seconder, sorry. Councillor Cisco. Okay, and Councillor Porter, is there any direction?
Yes, I think I'm happy with the staff report. I see the recommendation is in zone 1, which, you know, it's in between Meriton Ward and St. Patrick's Ward. And I think it's important for the downtown councillors, that includes the Meriton councillors and the Ward 4 councillors, to be involved in some of the decision making around the washroom placement. So I'm hoping that that can be included, that we are all involved somehow in some meetings related to any further community engagement or decision making.
Okay, so we're looking here, Councillor Porter, is both the St. Patrick's and Meriton councillors be brought along the continuum of decision making with regards to location. Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's obviously part of the motion, but it's direction to staff to be able to provide that. Okay. Now we got a speakers list. Was that a friendly, sorry, to both? Okay, thank you. Councillor Garcia, got you up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for staff for all that analysis. So through you to staff, but I'm not sure if it's communication staff I should ask. When I read that survey, I could not, just summary results, I could not tell, did the survey communicator explain the difference in cost for each of these alternatives?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can start, and I'm not sure if someone from communications would like to provide additional comment. The costs were not included as part of the survey. Just the types of washrooms and the locations were included in the survey for the public to provide feedback on.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say that that means that the people who responded to the survey were not fully informed. I'm not sure if having the cost would have made a difference. But anyway, a couple of questions, I think, through you to the Director Martuscio, Mr. Mayor. The CW alternative, is that for one stall or for two?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is for one accessible stall.
Thank you. And I'm curious, when I asked you about this the last time, you estimated the capital cost would be about $250, but now they're quite a bit more. Is that a change in what's available, or is that just based on your estimate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is based on current pricing that we've been receiving for other type work within the facilities department. It's basically a square footage price and cost for servicing and consulting fees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One more question of Director Martuscio. I'm trying to understand how city staffing costs can be approximately 3 times as much as not using or using an outside source, because I would assume some of the staff that is used is already on staff and working for the city and perhaps doing other things. So we're not hiring new people for all of them. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is not correct. In order to operate the facilities based on the hours that are identified above the chart there, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, we would have to hire additional staff in order to cover those there's weekend shifts as well as some afternoon shifts that currently our facility staff or our operation staff don't work, and that's why those costs are much higher.
Thank you. And the last question, I guess, part of my previous question, even if we do have to hire staff, does it make sense that it would be 3 times as much as using an outside source?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the reason why the staffing, city staff is much higher is because of, like I said, the additional staff that's required. However, it's indicated in the chart that only approximately 30% of their time or thereabouts would be required in order to service the additional washroom. The additional time would go to filling gaps within the corporation. The costs that were identified for contracting services were just to visit the facility every 2 hours based on the frequency that we currently service our existing public facilities. So that's why the contract prices are much lower.
Thank you. But so you're saying, let me understand what you just said. You're saying that the contractor estimate would be for much less checking and cleaning than city staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the cost for the contractor is just to services required for the additional washroom. The staffing costs are for the additional staff that we would require to hire in order to cover the shifts that are currently not being worked by anybody within our operations division.
Thank you. I understand, but I thought you just said that only a certain percentage of that time was allocated to the cost of the washroom. I still don't understand how it could be so much higher than a contractor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can put it in a finance way. So in our current complement, we would not be able to perform the work. So to be able to perform this work, we would need to hire additional people. They wouldn't be solely working on the washrooms, but we can't hire half a person or a quarter of a person or 30%, I think the report said. So that's why it is cost to the overall city. While they may not be spending all their time addressing the washrooms, we would still need to hire additional staff because it cannot be accommodated within our current complement. Whereas a contractor would be able to allocate staff they already have and charge just for the time at the washrooms.
I understand, CAO Candace, thank you very much. But even if you do hire new staff, are you only allocating the cost to the washroom of the time they would spend on that, or you're allocating their full amount?
In the actual accounts, when we do the operations in the budget, only the time spent, the time gets charged out where they spend it, but they will spend the rest of their time filling other gaps within the corporation.
Okay, so the 3 times cost is charging the full amount, costing the full amount.
Yeah, being transparent with council in this report to say we wouldn't be able to do it at the lower amount because we would have to hire the full person. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Garcia, and I think that's a point to come back to council. And before Councillor Kushner goes ask a question to the CAO. So in terms of the decision matrix on whether to hire additional full-time staff for the city or go to a contractor, where does that decision lie? Does that decision lie with the CAO, or is that a finance decision? Or
well, it certainly is a corporate decision. When we have a service that needs to be provided, we look to the best manner in providing that. What you're seeing from this report is that we aren't able to complete it within the complement, so we need to determine. And so we've been upfront with council to say, while it is not full-time for these number of people, we will have to add to the complement to to complete the work. But I would defer to Director Martuccio and Public Works or Municipal Works staff that have compiled these summary costs.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, CEO Kevnitz is correct. That's the assumptions that were made. Is that because the staff currently does not exist, we were trying to be transparent with the additional staffing costs that the city would incur.
Okay, and so just one follow-up, and I apologize to council, just one follow-up and going along with Councilor Garcia's talking about. So is there a company that actually performs these kind of duties that are available, or is that a projection of if the private sector were to do this, this would be the cost?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a few cleaning contracts in place right now, and we did reach out for similar services previously, and this we just extrapolated from the information that we'd previously received to come up with these costs.
Okay, and so again, I'm just trying to get to the decision matrix here. So when is the decision going to be made between the hiring or contractor? I guess that's what Councilor Garcia is, I think, pushing for.
As soon through you, Mr. Mayor, as soon as a decision is made with regards to the type of facility that will be operating, we'll make a decision with regards to staffing or contract services. If we go with an APT, I think at this point in time, we would probably try to cover it with existing staffing levels.
Okay, so if Councilor Garcia wants to potentially make an amendment to have that portion go to the budget committee for review before that decision is made, that might be a good way to ensure that there's a bit of an insight from council's perspective as to the spending decisions that are going to be made on the staffing of this. If Councilor Garcia, if you're open to that.
Yes, I would be, Mr. Mayor.
And then I'll look to the mover, if that's a friendly, just to have that portion of it come back to the BSC for at least insight to the decision.
That's right. Just point of order, I guess. This we're talking about the 2022 budget, correct? This is like, so go to the budget committee because we're not really looking to implement until next year, right? So
yeah, I'll go to Director Martuccio. That's a good point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. These washrooms probably wouldn't be in operation this year, so it would be an operating cost that would be reflected in the proposed 2022 budget.
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Perfect.
Then yeah, friendly.
Okay, so just have that staff portion. Yeah, you got the wording. Councilor Kushner, sorry about that. Councilor Kushner, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question I have when I look at the pictures, the APT and the PLST, they have one door. Why does the conventional washroom have two doors? It appears to be twice the size.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those are just depictions of we're trying to depict the type of facility and the way it's constructed. It is for a single accessible type facility.
Okay, it looks, to me, it looks very unattractive. I thought we could do somewhat better than that. I read the report and I have a concern about the APT, and that's the feedback and the lessons from other municipalities. It requires a lot of lead time to correct the deficiencies. And also it refers to one municipality which is disabling the automatic cleaning functionality, and they will be using staff to clean the washroom. So I find this type of technology, when it's relatively new, I have some concern about it. And that's why I do favor the PLST. It has advantages in terms of functionality. And when I look at the cost, the operating cost, it's higher than that for the APT. But in those costs, we haven't factored in the capital cost. So I would not be in favor of the APT, but instead the PLST. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Kushner. All right, seeing no further questions on this, Councilor Miller, if you want to wrap it up.
No, I mean, I think I've spoken a lot on this last few times it's been here, so definitely appreciate staff. I guess my only, clarification question was in regards to the survey. I thought maybe there wasn't the exact cost on there, but I thought there was a lot of information that staff put online that citizens were sort of directed to before they took the survey. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've discussed the potential costs of the various washrooms through various other council meetings, and at the budget meeting that we had earlier. The APT is the more expensive type facility to move forward with.
Okay. And was there any? I guess just I appreciate Councillor Kushner's comments. I was just curious. Was there any? Qualitative feedback on why people were preferring the APT over the PLST, or do we sort of have to assume based on just the different descriptions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the municipalities that we've reached out to indicated that the users of the APT felt that the cleanliness was drastically improved over the standard type facilities because it gets cleaned every 15 minutes. Based due to the automation of it, and there's increased levels of security that can be added to it, etc. So there are advantages to it, and the public seem to enjoy those types of added features.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think that's why I support the APT. So again, thankful staff, and excited to see this move forward, bring together two of the great wards of the city here in Zone 1. St. Patrick's and Meriton, and I think that's absolutely where it's needed the most. So I asked all my colleagues to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. And before we go to a vote, I think it's important on the communication side of this that we continue to have a discussion about public spaces and public bathrooms, because unfortunately an issue like this centers significantly on the conditions of that people are in sort of their life. And the reality is, if you look across North America, there's been a movement away from public washrooms, and we're putting more and more pressure on the private sector to open up their doors to people to use their bathrooms and almost treat it like a public bathroom. And I applaud council for having this discussion, but I think we need to have a broader community discussion around the abilities for people of all abilities and all ages to be able to access public bathrooms in our community. And moving forward, I'll want to talk about having something on our website or something on our on a handheld in St. Catharines that at least directs people to where the public bathrooms are in our community, and to better showcase these type of investments. You're going to hear a lot about the cost, and you're going to hear a lot about this is trying to put a Band-Aid over a larger issue. But when you take a step away from this, cities and communities have a role to play when it comes to public spaces and public washrooms. It shouldn't be that sort of dirty little topic that we don't touch because we're talking about toilets. The reality is that we should actually be talking more about this, because I don't think in our community we may be providing the space for people. And this is for kids, for parents, for grandparents, and people of all natures being able to use a clean service that we're going to have to invest some dollars into. So thank you, Councillor Miller, for pushing this forward, and for council to having this discussion. I apologize for taking up some time. To the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
No.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
No.
Councillor Harris.
No.
Councillor Garcia.
No.
Councillor Dodge.
No.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
No.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, 3.2 is engineering, facility, environmental services, transportation master plan, and we will have 3 delegations. I want to remind council that we've had a lot of opportunity to review this master plan. We had an education session that was with the director and the consultants. We've had a presentation to council. There's been a tremendous amount of online discussion in terms of engagement. So, and you've been given the last 2 weeks to be able to engage with staff about questions that you may have. So I'm anticipating that we can move through this, even though it's a very large master plan. We've given both council and the community a lot of time to be able to look at this and figure out what their positioning is. So we've got 3 presentations. They all are going to be under 5 minutes or 5 minutes max. And I'll start with introducing Mr. Anderson, who will be speaking, followed by Ms. Chan and then Ms. Trojan. So Mr. Anderson, welcome to council as Evan brings him into the meeting.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you though. Can we see you?
Mike, can you just turn on your video camera? Okay, hang on here. Gotta find myself. It's not allowing me to. Okay, hang on there.
There you go. All right, Mr. Anderson. So you're up at 5 minutes and or less, and you're off to the races.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, members of council, senior staff, my name is Mike Anderson. I live at 13 Trinity Circle in North St. Catharines. A few of you might recognize me as a former employee at Recreation and Community Services, where for 35 years I was responsible for horticultural planning and administering the municipal tree program. Among my other duties, I was a staff coordinator for the Friends of Malcolmson Park and the Community Gardens program. I also authored the Urban Forestry Master Plan, which is still the guiding document for the city's tree planting and canopy cover initiatives. In addition to these duties, I was also manager of the city's 2 golf courses, the Garden City Golf Course and the Fairview Golf Course for 6 years. I'm currently a member of the city's Green Advisory Committee and a member of the St. Catharines Environmental Alliance. I'm here tonight as a private citizen in opposition to the proposed roadway through the former Fairview Golf Course property. Excuse me. I'm extremely familiar with the property in question, and I would go so far as to say that there is no one more familiar with the property than myself. And if that is not the case, then that list is very short. There are a number of reasons why this roadway should not be built, but I would like to address 2 main areas of concern, which in and of themselves should be sufficient cause to reject the proposed roadway. Number 1, the property's effect on the immediate residential and multi-residential community and those who live in North St. Catharines. And 2, the environmental impact associated with the property. And that's where I'd like to start. The Fairview Mall is a prototypical urban heat island. It's a built environment, gray structure and paved surface with blacktop. It absorbs or traps solar heat or solar energy, and it radiates it as heat. On a typical summer day, the temperature here can be as much as 7 degrees higher than surrounding areas, and at night it can be as much as 5 degrees higher. This excessive heat, combined with emissions from the cars that enter the mall, increases air pollutants and damages air quality. The impermeable surfaces there send rainwater into our already overcapacitated stormwater system. This urban heat island effect essentially is abrasive heat, poor air quality, and stormwater runoff. And frankly, that's not healthy. And of course, this excessive heat and the poisonous greenhouse gases are easily transferred to neighboring properties and well beyond. But fortunately, we have a natural ecosystem of trees and vegetation adjacent to the mall at the former Fairview Golf Course site. In environmental terms, this site would be referred to as a heat sink. And because of its geographical location, it is one of the most important, if not the most important heat sinks in North St. Catharines. This property, the former Fairview Golf Course property, is everything the Fairview Mall is not. It's a vast open green space of grass, trees, and shrubs, a habitat for small birds, and a wildlife corridor for larger birds. It filters our air, it cools our air, it absorbs heat, it cleans and drains our rainwater. And because of its location, it offsets the damaging environmental effects produced by the Fairview Mall heat island. Construct a roadway through this property, and its environmental benefits become negligible. The heat and greenhouse gases from the mall will have the opportunity to travel unabated into the neighboring properties and beyond. There's also the impact that this roadway would have on those who use the park and those who live beside it. In that respect, we have what I would call a quality of life issue. This passive green space acts as a buffer between the thousands of people living in the apartments on Geneva and Scott Streets and the mall. It provides passive recreation for the residents in an area that is surrounded by major arterial roads. It provides relief from the mall both physically and environmentally. Construct a roadway here, and those benefits are negated. And finally, I have some reservations regarding the rationale for constructing this road. As I read through the Transportation Master Plan, I see that the justification, or in this case, the excuse, for this needed roadway is the presence of a gently worn pathway. As an excuse, that's right up there with the dog ate my homework. Truth be told, there's not really a valid determination for this roadway. Councillors, in April of 2019, you declared a climate emergency. To this date, I cannot think of a single event that has been done in response to this significant announcement. Protection of our green spaces is no longer an option. It is a necessity. I urge Council to not only reject the proposal for this roadway, but to remove it completely from the Transportation Master Plan so that it will not rear its ugly head again. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Just want to clarify. So in your presentation, you said we haven't done anything after declaring a climate emergency. You haven't seen anything from us?
I haven't seen a single event that I believe is in a response to the announcement. No, sir.
From the city?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll share you with a lot of stuff that we've been working on because I think you're misinformed there. I'll turn it over to Councillor Cisco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your comments with respect to the possibility of this road going through the park. I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly with you, which is why I'm bringing an amendment tonight, speaking exactly what you said, to simply delete the concept of this road through the park from the Transportation Master Plan in its entirety. I do have two questions for you. And the first question is going to be a little bit more technical than I would normally be with a presenter, but given your background and your history with the city, you would be well placed to be able to answer it maybe. One of the justifications that I have heard in the past of why a road here would make sense would be that it would decrease travel times. And I will admit, I find that to be a bit of a laughable contention that for what would be, just from purely financial terms, more than $1 million worth of building a road to shave a minute or two off of transportation times for people leaving the mall a handful of times a year. I'm just wondering if you could comment if you think that's a valid justification for building this road or not.
Obviously, I'm not an engineer and I'm not involved with the traffic studies. I can only tell you that I live close to the mall. I travel there to the mall a couple times a week, do grocery shopping and so forth. I also take my dog to Fairview to walk him a couple times a week. If I'm heading into the mall from the north, so I'm heading south, rarely do I ever have a problem entering the mall. As I leave the mall, again, heading north, I rarely have any problem exiting the mall. What I have observed, though, is quite a bit of traffic coming from the south, entering the mall, and a great amount of traffic heading south again excuse me, heading north to come into the mall, a great amount of traffic, and then those people heading south, a great amount of traffic. So I don't understand why we would have a roadway heading north when it seems to me that the traffic problems are caused by people coming from and exiting to the south.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. The other question I wanted to ask, and I bring this up because Councilor Porter and I received a lot of phone calls about this issue last week. There was some misinformation and I guess fake news going around online. The council had already asked for this. And so we were knocking on doors and dropping off leaflets in the neighborhood. And we walked through the park and we're talking to folks in the park as well. And one of the things that they said, and because you live in the area, you might be well able to answer this, is that the park serves as the backyard for the 1,000 odd people that live in the area. And over the last year, we've seen in Toronto, especially with very high densities and not enough green space for everybody, that people are relying on those parks to be able to get outside and get fresh air. Given that you live in the area and given your history in that part of the city, do you think it's fair to say that that green space acts as a communal backyard for everybody who lives and backs onto that area?
And I can only, given my own personal experience, I'd have to agree with you, especially when I go there a couple times a week with my dog. We see people who live in the apartments that go there. I see quite a few elderly people using the park, and there's very difficult to leave that particular block because you've got to cross 4 lanes of traffic if you want to get anywhere. The 2 closest parks are Lynn Lake Park and St. Alfred's Park, and they're both probably best part of 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers to go. So I do see a lot of local people using the park. I can tell you that, and again, it's just my experience, but when I'm at the park, the people who I see in the park are people that are using it for passive recreation. I don't see a lot of people going through the park, and I'm sure they do. I've walked through the park to walk over to the grocery store or to Home Depot if it's been a nice day. But certainly putting a roadway through there wouldn't entice me to drive my car there. I'm walking because I want to get the exercise.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your comments and for coming in and speaking to council today. I think you encapsulate a lot of the concerns that people in the neighborhood and people not in the neighborhood have with this. And as I said, I have an amendment that I'll be making to delete the concept of this road through John Page Park entirely from the master plan. So again, I appreciate you coming and speaking tonight.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cisco, Councillor Porter, and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for coming to speak to this. I think I'm going to ask you this question because you worked for the city for so long. I know you seem to have come with a singular focus on this park, but I'm just wondering if you've read the rest of the Transportation Master Plan and what your thoughts are, especially the concepts around complete streets and the fact that we will be centering pedestrians first, cyclists second, transit users third, and then the car fourth when we redesign streets. And you said that you're involved in an environmental group. I personally think this is transformational, and it's going to change the way the city's designed. It's obviously the city's been designed to support car travel over the last 50 years, and to change our city to a pedestrian-focused city, we have to build the infrastructure. So can you comment on that? And I'm asking your comments because you worked for the city, and I didn't hear you talk about the rest of what's really important in the Transportation Master Plan, the overarching vision around complete streets.
Well, I did my best to get through the plus 200 page document, so I'm going to have to tell you that no, I did not read the entire thing. I sort of perused it to take a look at what seemed to catch my eye. I do have to agree that the priority in the complete streets analogy, or the complete streets program, that certainly has some merit. I'm a cyclist. I cycle every day, and walk my dog and use the parks and travel by car when I need to, but I certainly think that it's catching the gist of the situation. It certainly sees where we're going to go. The car is becoming far less important. I see that not only with myself, but with my children, with my wife, with the people that I know. I will go to play pickleball in Virgil, and when years ago you would have seen everybody drive their car. Now people take their bikes there. People go together to drive there. I think everybody understands that we need to do more. That climate change is very real. We need to do what we can to abate it. When I was involved with the city, certainly, and when I wrote the urban forestry master plan, our complete street programs always had an environmental bent to it. We wanted to see a tree on every boulevard. We wanted to make sure that there were planning aspects that involved shrubs and trees and green space to alleviate all of the parts of climate change that we know are not good anymore, that they're causing the problems. So yes, I agree with you, Councilor Porter.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I just want to say this master plan, it's the first one in 56 years. It took a couple of years of staff's work, and I think it's transformational, and it's really a demonstration of what we are doing in the face of climate change to discourage people from using their cars and building the infrastructure to get them on their bikes, walking, and building complete streets, and thinking about transit-friendly, dense developments on transit routes. This is going to be part of our official plan. So I encourage you to read the whole thing and to let other people know what it is we're doing, because we're going to need the buy-in of the community. And I hate to see this being boiled down to, one part of the plan, which is a road for a park, when really there's a ton of wonderful things in there, and we need the community to understand what it is we're all going to do together in the next 20 years to build a different kind of St. Catharines.
No, I agree with you. Kudos to staff on a very good job.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, and Councillor Williamson. You're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mike. Mike, appreciate you being here. In terms of what you would optimally see for the park being developed, what would you envision us doing here?
The Fairview Golf Course Park?
Sorry, yeah, with both John Page and Fairview, the connection, that corridor.
Well, I think number one, I'd probably say plant more trees, larger stature trees. Really, trees are what I believe are a municipality's best tool to combat climate change. So plant trees where you can, and specifically in this location, plant trees. I think I would plant shrubs and pollinators along the fence line to increase habitat. I'd introduce native grasses.
So if I can, sorry, Mr. Anderson,
yep.
This is about the transportation side of it, Councillor Williamson. So I just want to, because we're not talking about this park specifically, and I think there is a report coming, Mr. Anderson, on this park from Director Christie. So I think Councillor Williamson's talking more about the active transportation part of it. Councillor?
Yeah, I'd be interested in how do you see us
moving through
pedestrian transportation pathways, etc.
I apologize. Sorry, I understand. In that respect, I think a looped pathway within the park, stone dust, not paved, with the opportunity to put some benches in around there. But that's probably as far as I would go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williamson, for that. Seeing no further questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, and for all your work that you did in the community of St. Catharines, and looking forward to seeing more of your comments moving forward as we work through some of our park designs as well. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next, we have a Miss Charlotte Chan, and Miss Chan is coming forward as well.
Can you all see me?
Yep. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this today. My name is Charlotte Chan. I've never spoken at City Council before. My face may seem kind of new, probably young in comparison to most guests. But I'm an executive member of the St. Catharines Environmental Alliance, and I was born and raised in this city. And hands down, if not the largest, and one of the most significant parts of my childhood were the outdoors. Hiking, rolling down hills, campfires, throwing around footballs, camping, water gun wars, soccer matches. All of this was a huge component of my upbringing. And thinking back, I can picture the fresh dew, new clippings, the peaking dandelions within, you guessed it, not a paved road of asphalt, but long, rich green grass. Then when I was 9, bit of a sidetrack, but I was hysterically awoken to the reality of our broken ozone layer. And 19 years later, I realized that when I'd first learned of the deteriorating ozone layer, that had just been my admittance to the metaphorical party, a party that had started long ago and was steadily en route to burn the house down. Today, April 12th, 2021, we are not in a, but the climate crisis. Like Mike stated, in 2019, our city declared our recognition and dedication to the crisis. And I want to remind everyone that this is it. But I won't go on to, insult anyone's intelligence. Without a doubt that everyone here is acutely aware of our planet's trajectory. I needn't tell you again. I'll just cut to the chase. I'm 18. I'm in university. Quite frankly, I didn't get a chance to read the entire transportation plan at all. Heck, I even have another meeting to get back to. But it doesn't matter. I heard that a green space as big and beautiful as John Page Park was going to be impeded upon. And that was all I needed to hear. Whatever the excuse or reasoning may be, whether it's making money or making things more convenient for the city's residents, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. And whatever the potential rewards of paving a road through a green space, whatever they are, it's relatively speaking temporary. There's no substitution for acting now, because the planet's life is passing us by. And although, yes, John Page Park is just one green space in St. Catharines, it still matters. And thus I'd like to request that it be removed from the transportation plan, that portion of it. That's all I have to say.
Well done, Ms. Chen. Thank you very much. And I think you've heard from one of the councillors that there will be brought forward an amendment to remove it, but your passion is well placed, and hopefully you'll stay engaged and continue to help guide us through many more decision opportunities around the climate emergency, because the city has been focused on that, and COVID has knocked us a bit sideways, but we need voices like yours to continue to remind us that this has to be a priority of ours moving forward as well. So are there any questions of Ms. Chen? Okay, seeing none, you can get back to the other meeting now, I guess.
I will. Thank you all.
Well done, and great format to be able to bring on young people onto a Zoom platform. It really does make it more accessible when we're in a digital format. So
much easier. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. I appreciate
thank you, everyone.
Take care.
You're leaving now. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chen. Next is Ms. Della Trojan, and she is no stranger to council. She has been very active, as Councillor Phillips and Councillor Dodge knows, related to the Walker Creek, Friends of the Walker Creek. And so, Ms. Trojan, you're up, and over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Della Trojan, and I'm a resident from the north end of St. Catharines. I would like to speak in support of removing the proposed road through the former golf course in the Fairview Mall area from the Transportation Master Plan. For many years, I've been a volunteer with the Friends of Walkers Creek and Malcolmson Eco Park. And during this time, I've had the opportunity to observe how well used our parks are. I have met people young and old from different walks of life, and in conversation, sometimes they share their story of why they come and what these green spaces mean to them. The trails and parks help them return to health from injury and illness. Stroller moms and dads have a place to go where their children can play and a chance for them to socialize. People suffering from mental health issues find solace in nature. The green spaces are often used by several community groups and area schools throughout the city. Green space is valued and needed for the health and the well-being of all our citizens. We have been told in the next few years, Niagara will see sharp growth in population. And the question is, where are they going to live? It is noticeable in the North End now. Schools closed, churches sell off land, and the area has become townhouse complexes. Even smaller lots where one home once stood is replaced by 2 single or semi-detached homes. With more people moving to Niagara, developers will be searching for opportunities to build, and with development, loss of green space often occurs. Most neighborhoods in the city have several areas of green space within their walking distance. The Scott Street area near the proposed site does not have the advantages of significant green spaces other than the old golf course site. Many residing in the area are surrounded by hard surfacing that includes roads, commercial buildings, and parking lots. Noise and pollution levels are elevated as a result of vehicular traffic on the highway and multi-lane roadways. The addition of another roadway will contribute to an unhealthy environment. Many residents live in apartments with very little green space available on their properties. The green space of the former golf course in its current condition, without any enhancements, have invited wildlife in all forms. The mature deciduous and evergreen trees throughout the green space are their home. Residents have a green space within walking distance to bring their children for exercise and play. They can walk with their 4-legged buddies or just sit on a bench and read a book. To make our municipality a healthier place to live, environmental friendly approaches have been taken by the city. The information can be found on the city website under climate change. To continue in this direction, we must embrace what green space we have and improve on it in any way we can. Once covered with pavement, it's lost forever. The past year has been a time of change for all in one way or another, and will definitely have an effect on lifestyle even after COVID times. Many who have been working from home have been told it will continue at least part-time and possibly full-time. Some who have lost their jobs have started businesses in their own home and aren't even considering returning to their own jobs. Those who were not familiar with online shopping are now regular customers. Many Costco shoppers in our city and from out of town will no longer be visiting the area of YMCA Drive to shop. Any Y members have to find a new place to keep healthy and strong. For these reasons, we should see a drop in congestion in the YMCA Drive area, as well as Geneva and Lake Street. In closing, my question to you is, do we save a green space for generations to come? Or do we make a road to save minutes off driving time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Trojan, for your comments. Very well done. The only question I have, because you are very familiar with significant parts of the pathways of our system, so would you be open to having a paved path in certain areas that allow for mobility? So my mother has significant mobility issues. On a crushed stone, a lot less secure in her footings. As we go down this path, how do we balance the ecological or the impact of a pathway when someone says, well, we don't want to pave it over, but then it negates certain people from being able to use the path? And I wouldn't say pave the Walker Creek pathway, but certain pathways that give people confidence, especially older adults and people with mobility devices, more confidence to be able to use the path. Or what would your position be on that?
Well, on a couple of times a year, I have a walk with city staff, and this question comes up, and a discussion always occurs about this. And what we found the best is not being paved, but using stone dust. Once the stone dust has been down and tamped, and it has been rained upon, it almost becomes like cement. And it lasts for years to come.
Okay.
I find that the best way. We do have some areas that asphalt has been used, and the issue with asphalt is that it can ice over, and the stone dust doesn't seem to do that.
Okay, no, good point. And I want to bring that out publicly because I think our accessibility committee will have to be included in some of these decisions, because people who are in wheelchairs or mobility devices, we want to hear from all people who are pursuing active transportation to ensure that whatever is decided, it balances everybody's expectations and needs rather than maybe just the able-bodied. So just wanted your perspective, because I know you look after a lot of different trails in our community.
Thank you.
And thank you for the work that you do. As Volunteer Week is coming up, I want to thank you as a volunteer in our community and all the people associated with your association. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Trojan. And that's it for our delegations. We've had 3 of them. So I just need a motion to receive all 3. Councillor Cisco, seconded by Councillor Williamson, and all in favor of. There you go. Thank you very much for those presentations. I now call upon Director Martuccio. We will have the recommendation report on the agenda. It'll be brought up after Director Martuccio has a couple of comments. And then I believe Councillor Littleton is going to be making the motion.
Mr. Mayor, the report before you tonight is for the adoption of the Transportation Master Plan that staff have been working on for the last little while. The Transportation Master Plan includes quite a few recommendations in terms of improving connections throughout the city, improvement to our active transportation, looking at building our city from a complete streets perspective, as well as revising the classifications for the various roads that we have throughout the city. There were quite a few questions that were sent to staff, and a memo was circulated in your correspondence that provides answers to all the questions that were submitted. And tonight we have Mr. Brett Sears and Mr. Brian Appleby here to answer any other questions or comments that you may have.
Okay, prior to getting into the questions, I apologize, Councillor Cisco, I think you were making the motion because you have an amendment. And so if you can make the motion, seconded by Councillor Littleton. Okay, so let's get the motion on the screen before we have a further discussion, because it may take away some of the questions that may come up. All right, Councillor Cisco, you've got the floor. So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I submitted 2 amendments, actually. I'll deal with the first one that we've already spoken about. The first amendment was to delete any and all references to a road through John Page Park and through the former Fairview Golf Course. And as as the presenters sort of mentioned, that there's a lot of, there is absolutely no appetite for this in the community based on the conversations I've had, not just in the last 4 days, although I will give a lot of credit to the residents in the area, because I know they filled mine and Councillor Porter's voicemail and email inboxes with lots of messages. We did go out and speak to residents on the weekend as we were dropping off flyers, just letting people know what the plan was tonight. And there's a desire of anything to see an enhancement of the green space. The discussion, I think, around the accessibility of a trail and how we make that work for everybody is a good one. But I think it's not about this. I think tonight, simply that the plan delete any mention to a road through the park and the green space is important.
Okay, it's your motion, Councillor. So if you have another amendment,
no, I do. I'm just speaking to that one specifically, Mr. Mayor.
Put them both up there so we can see, and then you might as well speak to both of them.
And that's what I'm going to do. The second amendment that I'm bringing has to do with Wellandale Road. As I'm sure many members of council know, Wellandale is a connection of sorts between 4th Avenue, just where 4th Avenue begins, and Martindale. There have been a lot of issues with respect to traffic calming over the last couple of years, and residents asking for measures that could be put in place. And in the Transportation Master Plan, the decision was made to list it and classify it as a collector residential corridor. And there's a justification given in the memo from staff, but in looking at the collector residential corridor and the what would expect for something like that, it doesn't meet any of the requirements. It's really comes down to the fact that there's a high volume on this road. And that's one of the things I've been trying to fix for the residents in the neighborhood for a number of years. And I've been told in the past that the geometry of the road doesn't allow for some of the traffic calming measures, et cetera, that could be put in. But where the complete streets application that's listed talks about putting sidewalks on both sides of the street. Well, there's no room for sidewalks. It talks about this being a pathway for transit, but transit would never run a bus down here. It talks about on-street parking, but you'd never be able to fit on-street parking. It says that the right-of-way width should be minimum of 20 meters. And I'll be honest, Wellandvale Road at any point, there's no way it's 10 meters across, never mind 20. So I'm asking that it be designated properly as a residential, I believe the term, community street, sorry, be designated as a community street. And that would allow the work of trying to figure out how to calm the traffic in the area. And staff have presented a number of ideas, including closing the bridge that goes over the 12 Mile Creek as a possible option, that the work be put in to find a way to calm the traffic in the area. I think moving it to a residential, collector residential corridor puts a check mark next to the 1,800 vehicles that are using it and doesn't do anything for the residents in the neighborhood who simply want a safe area for them and their families to be able to operate and enjoy their homes. So those are the two amendments, and I appreciate staff putting together the language as they did.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And the seconder is Councillor Littleton, and we'll go over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of amendments as well, if Evan doesn't mind putting them on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you so much. The first one is that the recommendation to permit trucks on the Welland Canals Parkway from Glendale Avenue to Eastchester Avenue be removed, and that Welland Canals Parkway not be shown or included as part of the Good Movement Network. And also that Grantham Avenue South, this is between Eastchester and Queenston, remain as it is now, which is to not allow trucks on that street and be classified as a community street. So I don't know if I have to wait, if Councillor Cisco, if those are friendly. Okay, thank you. So for about the Welland Canals Parkway, I've spoke about this before, and I understand what the Transportation Master Plan is saying, and it makes sense if you're looking at where we're going to move trucks around, but I stand firm on the fact that we are developing that entire area, regardless if houses do not actually face Welland Canals. We have created a large community in that area, and I think what we should be looking at is making it more cycling friendly, walking, to make it a real community, rather than putting transport trucks down that street. They're just going to have to use our other streets that they have, and they're going to have to be enforced to use those streets, which would be Bunting, Hartzell Road, and on the other side of the canal. And in terms of Grantham Avenue South, that is a 300-meter street, that portion of it. Trucks right now are coming off the highway. They're cutting down this street. It's a narrow street as well. There's parking on one side, and when cars are parked there, you can only go down with one car, so you have to wait. We're actually looking at a pilot project to make it a one-way street for that section from Blair to Eastchester, because of these trucks are causing such a problem for the residents that are there. So unless we're prepared to move all the houses off this street, I think putting the trucks on there is it's a poor decision. So that's my reasoning for those two. And thank you to Councillor Cisco for having them be friendly. And I hope that my colleagues will agree with that as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I just want to sort of manage this. Is there anyone else that has amendments? If you could just sort of wave your hand. So yeah, one more. So I'm going to go to Councillor Porter for amendments, and then we'll have the discussion on, so we know exactly what we're talking about when we discuss the full motion. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope mine is friendly. and I don't want to go on and on, but even though we've got some amendments here, I think the master plan is amazing and I'm really thrilled about it. And I want to thank staff and the consultant and for bringing it forward. I'm really excited about it. And my motion is simply that staff be directed to report back with the suggested terms of reference and like a composition of some kind of advisory committee or task force for the transportation master plan and the future active transportation master plan, something that would be similar in nature to the recreation master plan advisory committee. So this would be focused on implementing the transportation master plan and all of the policies, as well as there's been discussion and there's a recommendation in there that we actually need an active transportation plan as well. So some kind of task force really with a focus on cycling, complete streets, and active transportation that would help guide this. So I would be asking staff to help come up with the composition of that and the terms of reference and come back to us with what that would look like.
Okay. Councillor Cisco, thumbs up on the direction, and Councillor Littleton. Okay, so we've got, and I think anybody else with amendments? I'm just looking for a wave of hands if you have an amendment. Okay, so we're turning over now to discussions. In terms of, I apologize, I got to pull up the list. So Councillor Williamson, you are up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With these amendments, I now fully support the transportation master plan. I think it's got a lot of substance and it takes the city in the right direction. Because of my involvement in protecting John Page Park and Fairview Greens, former Fairview Golf Course, green space is left over from it. And it's not a new issue. It's got a long history. And this park borders Port Dalhousie Ward, borders my own neighborhood. And I know what detrimental effects putting a road through there would have in terms of adding traffic on Sherman Drive and Lynn Lake, and for the residents that Councillor Garcia and I represent. Other people have already made the point about the importance of John Page and the former golf course as recreational places, particularly spaces, particularly for passive recreation. But it also does have a pretty well-equipped playground that's well used as well. So it's kind of got an active aspect as well. Yeah, it's kind of like the issue that has 9 lives. It just seems to be recycled. I hope that this puts an end to consideration of this. We waste time on these kinds of issues that just keep coming back in front of us for those of us that have been around for a while. We were asked to provide any further questions that we have. I asked that previous decisions of council, reports from staff, and directions of council be included. We didn't get that information, and I'm not going to pile on, but in terms of, and Councillor Cisco's talked about it being $1 million cost to put a road through there. I haven't done the research to know exactly what it would cost, but we know it's going to be a significant expenditure of local tax dollars to do that. But I was reminded by a colleague that we had previously made a motion not to put a road through there. And so I suspect that what we're considering here would actually be a reconsideration. But it doesn't sound like it's going to go through council tonight, which is a good thing. The other issue that hasn't been included here is that this is the Third Welland Canal corridor. And there is a tremendous amount of underground infrastructure, sewers, water, and other things that could be obstacles to make road construction through there even more difficult. That was in previous reports. And so I just did want to point that out. Charlotte mentioned already what I was going to say, that actions speak louder than words. And to me, this is a symbolic kind of an action that we would take that really contradicts what the overall premise and direction of the plan is, which is to diversify our transportation system, take us forward, to make it more environmentally sustainable, And so I'm glad with the amendments that have been made. We know that the Fairview Mall and the big box area is undergoing a transition. It's already been mentioned about change in Costco, and Walmart is not there, the YMCA. So traffic patterns have actually already changed. So there are my comments on that particular aspect of it. The other thing I would say about the Welland Canal Parkway, and I agree with Councillor Littleton's amendment not to have the trucks on it. We're on that quite frequently, and I've brought this forward a couple times in the past, that we have a frequent number of conflicts between cyclists and pedestrians on the Welland Canal Parkway. So I think it is important that we try and get cyclists, not young people that are on their bicycles, children that are on their bicycles, but the people that go at a pretty good pace, the people that wear the gear and all that kind of stuff and have road bikes. It would be really better if they were on the road. So whatever we can do to reduce the conflict between cyclists and pedestrians along the Welland Canal Parkway, I think would be a good thing as well. So thank you, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. And I think this is a good night for council that we're doing it in this way with these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Miller.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess, echoing pretty much everything that's been said so far. I did have a couple questions that haven't been answered yet, I think. And the reason I didn't send maybe earlier is Mr. Anderson sort of highlighted it. Certainly when I read the report, there's fairly scarce reference to climate change. It does come up, but it's certainly not a focus of the report. And I'm just curious what our own climate change coordinator and sort of green team, how involved were they in composing this transportation master plan?
Maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll start, and then Mr. Brian Appleby can add any context that he has. The document was circulated to both external and internally for comment, and we carried out engagement at least 2 or 3 times, and we did engage with various departments for their feedback. The one thing that should be noted is that the transportation master plan did have a focus on transportation. However, all of our documents should be read together, and we're currently completing our climate change adaptation plan, and we also have our energy and conservation management plan. That should be, all those documents should be read and should be considered when we're making decisions throughout the city.
Thanks, Anthony. And just to add to Anthony's, through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, the report itself was circulated through our environmental team, NEFES, and we did receive comment back from them and from the manager as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I know, this has been over 5 decades in the making, but I recognize we pretty radically updated our climate change goals, I believe, less than 2 years ago now. And obviously the transportation master plan is going to be so comprehensively involved in everything we do going forward. So in order to meet those goals, obviously it's necessary. So I guess, I'm sure staff know this, but obviously as we roll these out, we'll have to keep in mind those new stated citywide goals in terms of our carbon emissions. My other question, and I agree with Councillor Littleton's amendment about Welland Canals Parkway. I did have a couple questions because I found the report a little bit confusing. It doesn't really mention why, and I guess to play maybe, or allow staff to play devil's advocate, why this was necessary. It seems to allude that truck freight traffic is actually changing to more electric on demand, smaller vehicles. So why, and it doesn't really mention why it's critical that the trucks be allowed on Welland. So maybe before we approve this, one last chance maybe to make the case for that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, sure. Basically, we were just recognizing the, I guess, location and design of the road itself and its proximity to the canal and the connections between the bridges and regional road network, and the fact that there isn't a parallel route that's in close proximity to it. And when trucks are delayed at the bridges, they often look for ways to route around rather than sit and idle. The road originally, obviously was a service road for the canal, so the structure of the road is there to handle the heavy vehicles, and also there is an adjacent active multi-use path in close proximity where so folks aren't required to walk along the side of the road or cycle along the road either, and so that mixing with trucks isn't necessary there where it would be in other places. So really it was looking at the function of the road, how it's being used currently by trucks, albeit illegally when they are traveling up and down there, and the regional connections that it makes. That is really the impetus of the recommendation coming out of there, was just to help complete that goods movement network.
Okay, I appreciate that. And again, I continue. I'll support the amendment, and I know it'll maybe inconvenience some those in the freight industry, but I think there's a good opportunity to use our influence to maybe nudge them into using smaller vehicles, maybe using electric vehicles going forward. We got to consider this plans for the next few decades. Hopefully not 56 years, but for the next few decades. So hopefully. Get some of those bigger trucks off the road, and then they can get back to using Welland Canal Parkway in a way that's safer. So thank you for that, and thanks staff again. It's just an absolutely wonderful document, and really excited about what it means for the city.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe a lot of my comments have been covered already, but I would like to say to start with that I know all the areas well in the 4 amendments, and I certainly support every one of them. I'm particularly concerned about that Grantham Avenue situation because I do drive through there frequently to go over to Hartsel Road, and as Councilor Littleton pointed out, it's really hard to get through there in a car now, much less a truck. I can't imagine it. The one question that I would like to ask Councilor Cisco as the mover of that First Amendment, that one is a particular concern to me. And I remember walking that park with Councilor Cisco and Councilor Williamson a few years back, just looking at the same concern that we had. And I just want to make sure about the wording, like the way he articulated it. He said that he wanted any and all mentions of this putting a road through there removed from the plan, and I just want to make sure that he's satisfied that the wording that's in there accomplishes that.
Okay.
I am. And ultimately, I mean, if any decision were ever made on this issue, it would have to come back to council, but I'm comfortable with the language as it's written.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Cisco. So that means that, Dale, we will not have anything about an environmental assessment there, because of course, once that's done and funds are spent on that, you get kind of committed to doing something. So I'm glad to hear that. So I will support all of those amendments. And I wanted to particularly thank the delegations in terms of the great explanations and that they gave us and the concerns that they expressed. And I thought Mr. Anderson was just excellent because of his detailed knowledge. Thank you.
Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. One clarification question to Director Martuccio. So just to be clear, and this is for the benefit of the residents. So that road going through John Page Park, that was a study, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the recommendation in the TMP was to undertake an environmental assessment, which basically reviews options for improving connectivity between Scott Street and YMCA Drive.
And Mr. Mayor, to the director, that information was gleaned from the survey that you put out. So that came from residents, people that actually participated in the survey, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was engagement with the public through public meetings, and it was also based on technical analysis of the area, but I'll let Brian elaborate on that.
Thanks, Anthony. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Director Martuccio is correct. That was one of the hotspots that was noted at the onset of the transportation master plan, and those options were vetted through the public process, which included stakeholders and residents. And there was some support that was found as well through that. So it's just that whole process that we went through, as Anthony said, is to ultimately recommend that further study be done to see what the most appropriate connection would be. And the TMP had in there that should include everything from looking at a pathway through a transit connection through to a full multimodal road.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Mayor, to Director Appleby or Director Martuccio. So you'll recall last term that there was a tremendous traffic backlog at the intersection of Geneva Street and Carlton. And I think what people are forgetting too is that there's also a backup of traffic at the Lake Street intersection. And I think it's the YMCA Drive. Forgive me, I don't know what what the name of that street is, but it goes right into the YMCA. So is that current? I know that some of the traffic has been alleviated. So can you just speak to the backed up traffic issues, particularly at those intersections, and how they could possibly relate to to you reaching the decision to at least have a study for a roadway through John Page Park?
Sure. Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct, Councillor. So the modeling that was done, the traffic modeling that was done, did show that there are traffic delays, and again, the modeling was done and the traffic counts were taken prior to the Costco that has reopened, but prior to COVID, and it was with the former Costco site operational. However, the modeling basically only sort of substantiated the anecdotal evidence of driving through the area and the complaints that we get regarding delays to vehicles. And one of the biggest delays in there actually is to transit vehicles as well. There's a major transit hub, as everyone knows, that's in there that serves both GO Transit as well as our local city and regional transit, and the buses in there, especially on busy days, Saturdays in particular, they get quite delayed. They also have to exit out through a private parking lot, which is part of the Fairview Mall site. So part of the impetus for looking at a further study to this was to help alleviate the delay that is to those vehicles as well. So that was another part of the recommendation to look at further study in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to any one of the directors, has any money been allocated to this study?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, there are no funds allocated to doing an environmental assessment in this area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I just have one more question. It's to Councillor Littleton. I see in her amendment number 3. I think the thing that concerns me, and I'll ask Councillor Littleton if this would be considered to be a friendly amendment to her amendment. The councillor is suggesting that we remove the heavy trucks right down to Eastchester along the Welland Canal Parkways. Well, that's in Councillor Townsend's ward and my ward. It's only a little strip, and Mr. Mayor and everyone, that's a heavy duty industrial area back there, and there are a lot of transport trucks that go back there. That little pinch point isn't exactly the best place. That little strip between Eastchester and Queenston Street, the Homer Bridge, I think there's a wide enough path there, and I can't remember if there's a cycling lane there or not. But would you consider removing that just so that it doesn't affect the hundreds of industries that are back there, not to mention along Bunting Road? Councillor
Littleton.
It won't. I know where. I think I.
Councillor
Thank you. So through, maybe we should ask the director. My intention is not that strip. It's from Queenston to Glendale. That is my concern. Are trucks currently allowed on that other section?
Near the Eastchester.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, there is a truck prohibition on Welland Canals Parkway between Queenston and Eastchester. In that area right now there is, and to your previous question, there is not a bike lane on Welland Canals Parkway in that area either.
You know what? Maybe I misread it, Mr. Mayor. The number 3. So this wouldn't have anything to do with Ward 3, right? Just north of the
Just
sky.
point out the wards meet up at Glendale and Eastchester. So
Okay, you know
or
what?
Welland Canal and Eastchester. So sort of.
I think maybe I misread it, Mr. Mayor. I don't think that's in the ward, but I did have a concern about the industrial area, so I'm good with it, and that's fine. Thank you. I yield the floor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento, Councillor Phillips, and then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend Councillor Cisco for putting this amendment forward in regards to this park. As Councillor Williamson and I know, we've been concerned about this park for many years, as far as, is it going to be sold for development? Is a road going through? And I think we're finally going to put this to bed, and yes, it's going to be a park once and for all. My concern was, as far as the transportation master plan is concerned in this situation, I don't think the recreation master plan was ever approached about the impact of whether a road should go through or not. And to me, in the future, if we ever have a major plan like this go through, they can't operate in a silo. I think we have to make sure that we contact any other groups that might be impacted by this, because I know with the recreation master plan, we've talked at great length about the possibility of what could be at the Fairview Park. So anyways, I'm pleased to see that we're finally going to keep it as a park, and I look forward to studies coming forward to see what we can actually do with it, because it is a real gem. Also, as far as trucks on Welland Canal Parkway, it was my understanding that in the past it was the Seaway that brought in a, policy that would not allow trucks to be traveling on the Welland Canal Parkway. Is that the case, or was that our policy? Director, okay, Martuccio, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of that. Maybe I'll refer that to Brian to see if he's got any additional information, but that I'm not aware of that. That there's a restriction from the Seaway for trucks on Welland Canal Parkway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to add, I believe that the truck restriction came in after the city took control of the roadway itself in the early 1990s, but I can't say that with 100% certainty. We would have to look into that.
Okay, with this restriction on this section, is that going to mean that, for instance, single axle vans, I'll use like Chron Electric or something like that, in a small van, probably classified as a truck, I guess, but they wouldn't be able to use that? Or is it primarily just for multi-axle vehicles?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention is to keep the heavier vehicles off. So it's under the regulations, under the Highway Traffic Act, it identifies what is considered a heavy vehicle, and it's based on gross weight. So usually the small, like a van, like say a Chron Electric van, would not breach that weight. So it's not intended to keep those off. It's the larger vehicles, whether they're single or multi-axles.
That's good. That to me, that's important. I've had a couple of companies indicate concern with that. And one last item, and I guess I can direct this to Director Martuccio. I mentioned last time about my concern about large transport trucks going up Lakeshore Road and Niagara Street going through residential areas. It's caused many problems before. Councillor Dodge and I have had many phone calls about rumbling trucks going up through there. We want to talk about walkable neighborhoods, and we're concerned about the environment. Well, there's nothing worse than large transport going up through a residential area, albeit it is a regional road. Do we have any jurisdiction as far as that, or is that strictly does that strictly come from the region?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is under jurisdiction of Niagara region. However, we could engage with them, but again, regional roads are generally do carry that type of traffic.
Okay, I mentioned this last time. Are we, or have we, will we be discussing that with them? Because obviously there's a more direct route out of the Port Weller Industrial Park down to the QEW, down Reed Road, straight out like that, rather than bring it up through Grantham and Port Dalhousie or St. George's Ward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, we can engage with the region. However, like I mentioned before, their roads are designed to carry that type of traffic. But we can ask them to see if there's anything that we can do to mitigate some of the volumes. But that is something that we would have to engage with the region on.
I really don't, and I'm not being facetious, I really don't care that the roads are designed to handle that type of truck. It's the fact that we're going through a residential area with transport spewing fumes and loud noises and in my mind, danger to the residents when they can go, in a safer, less environmentally impactful, if you want, concern. So I would appreciate it if you take that to the region and work very hard on getting them out of town. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Townsend for the wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I'm quite content with what has been brought forward. Usually I'm pretty concerned with some of these hyperbolic motions and amendments that are put on the table. But in this sense, I'm quite happy to see that Councillor Cisco and Councillor Littleton have put these amendments on the floor because they were concerning to me when I first did see them. I do have a question in regards to, we've been talking about some type of walking trail around through John Page Park. Crushed stone dust was mentioned. Now I know Councillor Sorrento and I have received a lot of phone calls in regards to the CN Rail Trail that was originally going to be done in crushed stone dust, but residents were concerned with how accessible that would be because there's a lot of seniors that do live in that area. So I'm wondering if it is set in stone, no pun intended, that the path will be paved or done with crushed stone dust.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are you referring to the path at Grantham Trail or the one through John Page Park? Sorry, just for some clarification.
Nope, I'm referring to the one at John Page Park that we're talking about.
Yeah, currently that trail we're looking at implementing some sort of a hard surface, something greater than stone dust because of it being classified as an active transportation route. So there's people with mobility issues, accessibility issues that would be using it as well. The hard surfaces allow for improved levels of service. I know that Municipal Works is looking at improving levels of service that would allow for continued maintenance 12 months a year versus just seasonal use. And in order to run plows and equipment like that down the trail, it will last a lot longer, and it's a better product if it is a hard surface versus a stone dust surface.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, just because there are a lot of seniors that do live around John Page Park, I know that for a fact. My other question would be in regards to the trucks being not permitted on the Welland Canal Parkway. I'm wondering how that would impact, say, we have a shipyard that is expanding, and we also have General Motors at the other end that I'm sure use and need large trucks to have access to both. How is this going to impact not allowing them on Welland Canal Parkway? I know we don't now, but my concern is just in the fact that any further expansion, especially with the shipyard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so again, it's about making additional connections for them and giving them options so that they aren't limited to coming in and out one direction. Using the Welland Canals Parkway does give them those options. And as you said, at either end of the road, we have two fairly major employers who are industrial as well. And we know that they are delayed and that they have to find alternate means to get across or they have to wait. And currently we know that the road is used by trucks and not necessarily, and I don't have evidence it's from either of those, but we know that they are there are trucks that are trying to get around the closures, the delays that are caused by the bridges going up and down. That's a natural barrier that we have here that we have to deal with. And again, that was behind the thought process behind allowing trucks to use that particular road.
So if I'm correct, the only access they would have right now is Lakeshore and Glendale, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Right now, if because I'm just trying to think, I'm sure trucks have used the Welland Canal Parkway. How do we regulate that? How do we, if a truck is using that parkway, I mean, are they fined? Does someone pull them over? What is the protocol there?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. So there's only two bodies that can ticket. It's that being the police or the MTO commercial vehicle officers. So in order to police it, they have to sit out there. They have to watch for the truck to come by. Then they have to pull them over, and they can ticket them. The ticket is for essentially disobeying official sign, that being the no truck prohibition. It's resource intensive. We have worked with both the carrier, the MTO commercial vehicle and the NRP. And they have been good partners, but again, that's they have to manage that with all of the other concerns that they have, traffic related and otherwise. So it is difficult to police that type of behavior. And I believe that the trucks that use it often get there, they're frustrated, they make the turn, and they take their chances. And often that's there isn't somebody waiting to give them a ticket.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you to staff for putting this forward and for the amendments on the table. I will support them as is, but I will caution that possibly going forward that we may have to revisit and look at allowing the Welland Canal Parkway use down the road, especially within an expanding shipyard and an expanding GM. So just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Okay, so that's it for the questions. Thank you, staff, for putting this report together. We'll go through the vote now. We'll just do it as a whole roll. I haven't heard anybody wanting to separate this, so we just do it as a roll, and I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Mark Elliott will be pleased.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Just want to again thank staff for all the work that they put into this, for members of the public that took the time to provide input, to council for being as engaged as they have been. I will tell you, this is one of those plans that don't come along very often. And yeah, we can talk about the 55 years and all that. But when you think of the Creative Cluster Master Plan, when you think of the Recreation Master Plan, when you think of this kind of master plan, they don't come around every term of council. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge the work that everybody's done, both the staff and the public, because this is now going to be one of those documents that we can refer back to, much like we've been able to refer back to the Creative Cluster Master Plan, the Recreation Master Plan. That really does help inform the decision on how we're building our community. So just wanted to take a time out to say thank you to the council and staff for creating what I think is going to be a monumental plan, and it's up to us and future councils to ensure that the actual core pieces are going to be implemented. And that'll be where the rubber hits the stone dust gravel path, if you want to call it. Okay, we'll go down to motion to ratify forthwith recommendations. That council adopt the items approved forthwith by general committee of Monday, April 12th. Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Harris. All in favor, show of hands. Okay, it's carried. So we got a couple of motions. Just want to get off the chart here. 11.2, Councillor Porter, if you can bring it up on the screen. This is largely this is something that we're adding to the schedule. So Councillor Porter, if you just want to take us through it.
Sure, it's adding 2 special additional council meetings for training. It's Monday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. and Wednesday, May 26th at 6 p.m. And we'll be going in camera for the purpose of equity education and training. I think this is the first time our council is getting equity training, and I think it's fantastic. And I want to thank staff and everybody who has put this together. I think the region just went through some equity training, and I think it's important for all councils to understand and gain different perspectives in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. While we can't make anything mandatory, I would strongly suggest that council make every effort to be here. I have taken the training at the region now. It's been 2 sessions that we've sat through. It has proven to be very, very educational, engaging, and enlightening. Councillor Littleton, you have a question?
No, I'd be happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Okay. All in favor? Show of hands. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Okay, Councillor Dodge, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make this motion, and would you like me to read it out, or?
If you want to explain, if you just want to simply explain it, I think it's just tell us why it's in front of us. You're on the task force, so that's why it's coming forward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am on the task force, and I'd first of all like to say thank you to staff that worked very diligently to put together a very comprehensive package to put out to the artists. And I was actually very surprised at how detailed and how much information they asked for, and how much time, I think that going through it, just myself reading it, how much time the artists have to go through to you know, make it that they are even possible to be considered for this. And I think that, you know, moving forward, I think that this is a good thing to support, so that we can help them a little bit out on some of the time, because not all of them obviously are going to be selected to actually put this together. So I think that this is a good thing that they have some sort of stipend to help offset some of the time that they do have to spend with this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dodge. And it's important to note that the funds, there is a fundraising effort that will take place, and additional funds that could be raised over and above would be put back into the Civic Project Fund in terms of the amount that's being asked for today. Councillor Littleton?
Yes, thank you. I don't have any problem with this. I'm just wondering, we had just approved earlier in the meeting the reserve for the, oh, I've got the wrong one. Never mind. I apologize, Councillor Dodge. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do need a seconder though. Councillor Harris? Okay, all in favor, is this with this unanimous vote here? Opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dodge, for this. Greatly appreciated. Notice a motion. You have Councillor Littleton, you have something you want to bring up for next meeting?
Yes, I do. So it's just a notice of motion about traffic and noise from traffic on Highway 406. Thank you.
Okay. And now, any other report requests? Okay, if you do have any, just please submit them in advance. Reading of bylaws that council adopt, the council agenda A through C be read a first time, considered and passed, and they be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. And that's moved by Councillor Porter and seconded by Councillor Cisco. And I'll look to the clerk to call a question on that one, because it is a reading of the bylaws. Oh, she's on mute.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Cisco?
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik?
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you for that. And now we go to ABCs. Motion that council receive and file the minutes of the ABCs, that's advisory committees of council, and that the motion be received and filed to the minutes, file the minutes. I have Councillor Kushner and Councillor Harris. And any questions or comments on the ABCs? Seeing none, all in favor, they are the minutes. That's carried. Thank you very much. And the motion to adjourn. So thank you very much, council. We got Councillor Harris, we got Councillor Townsend. Thank you for a great meeting, folks. This has been an outstanding meeting. And I just want to say lots been done tonight. And yeah, keep going. You're doing a great job.
I wanted to thank the mayor for sticking through the meeting, even though he had a serious headache. Admirable.